Micah Versman here, and this is the Producer Podcast. Today, we're taking a behind the scenes look at the behind the scenes team as we sit down with Kevin Peeples to discuss what a producer should know about capturing all that amazing movie making magic. So, without further ado, let's get started. Thank you very much for coming on the show today, Kevin.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here, man. This is great.
So, maybe take a few minutes to introduce yourself and kind of talk about like how you ended up doing BTS in the film industry.
Yeah, my name is Kevin. I'm a film director as well as behind the scenes marketer. I'm a father of eight and love my kids and teach film through an online course called Elementary Film School, where we teach film and kind of the foundational elements that you need to be a good storyteller and filmmaker on an age appropriate level to kids. So it's great to be able to take what I've learned and pass that on. But I got into behind the scenes work kind of officially on War Room with the Kendrick brothers whenever they came through Charlotte. So I was living close to them or close to the production at the time, and whenever they came through, I was like, it's right in my backyard. I'd love to get on the crew. And they had a prayer meeting at the Billy Graham Library. And I was able to go and meet them and spoke to their locations manager and one of the producers. And they said there's no crew positions available at all in the film. And it was like, man, I'm so close to getting this opportunity. And so I went and tried to get on the crew and find a way. And after about 3 weeks, they said, we've got a position available on the locations department, and it's at the bottom of the totem pole. Like it's the low pay. We don't want people coming in who are there just to move their way up to the top. Like we want someone who's willing to work locations. And basically, what that job is taking out the trash, getting chairs set up, getting cones and parking things set up for crew if we're renting out a location or blocking off a street. So you're usually there for probably 4 hours longer than the rest of the crew. You get there earlier to set up for the crew to arrive, and then you're there taking down and cleaning up after they're done. So it's kind of a grueling job. And I was like, I'll take it. I just want to be on this crew. And probably about 2 hours later, one of the producers called and he's like, I'm sorry, that position's no longer available. And I was just like, Lord, what is going on? I've been praying for weeks, and just to kind of have that door kind of shut in your face. And so this is Friday, and they're starting filming in 3 days on Monday. And so it was like, I was about to have a job, about to get to work with them. And so the producer's like, well, there's somebody who wants to speak to you on the phone. And so I was like, okay, didn't know what was going on. And Stephen Kendrick comes on the phone and he's like, have you ever done catering for a movie? And I was like, why is Stephen asking me to cater a feature film? So kind of nervously, I was like, I've catered music videos and done as a producer on music videos, you wear multiple hats and you're in charge of catering and locations and all that stuff. And so I was like, I've had to do catering for music videos, but I'm thinking, I don't want you to even hire me. I don't feel good doing catering for a film. And after I said that answer, there was this long kind of silent pause. And then I heard a bunch of people laughing in the background. And I was like, what is going on? And he's like, dude, we don't need you for catering. And I just took a deep breath and I was like, I have no idea what's going on right now, but I'm talking to Stephen Kendrick, which I hadn't talked to really at all in this process. And he's like, but we do have a behind the scenes position that just opened up. And the person who was there kind of dropped out, or I don't know the reasons why, but the position opened up. And so he did a 30-minute spiritual interview, didn't ask any technical questions, any skill questions. It was just all kind of a spiritual interview where you are and you walk with the Lord. And after that, he's like, okay, I'm going to call Sony and you'll be working, if they approve, then you'll be working with them. And he's like, you are available for the next 6 weeks, right? And I was like, actually I am. And so that was on a Friday, and I started on a Monday. And so behind the scenes, you kind of you partly work with the producers, but you also can work with the publicists and work with, in this case, the studio, because they have marketing needs that go into it as well. And that was kind of a new aspect for me, is the marketing side. Usually behind the scenes, you kind of think, these Lord of the Rings kind of breakdown features of how did they shoot the green screen stuff, like how did it all get made? But at least with smaller budgets and kind of more the independent realm of filmmaking per se, where you don't have absolute budgets to do whatever you want. There's a lot more focus on the marketing side than the actual behind the scenes kind of making of. So it's kind of a quick story of how I first got into it, working for them many years ago.
Okay. So then, because I know you were on Overcomer too, have you mainly done BTS just with the Kendricks, or have you been doing it for other films as well?
I've mainly done behind the scenes with the Kendrick brothers. I've also helped the Burns with Beyond the Mask. I have helped out with some non-feature stuff. That work and that experience kind of in the marketing side kind of translated into helping other people market, whether it's a YouTube channel or other things. But I think that's kind of my biggest takeaway from behind the scenes is really look at it as a producer, really look at behind the scenes as kind of the window that the audience has into why they should go see the movie. We don't have big A-list stars and people that bring audience members just because, oh, my favorite person's in the movie, or Spider-Man's in the movie, my favorite character. There's, those kind of movies, you don't necessarily care about what the actual story is. You just know, it's part of the franchise, or it's this or that, and you just go, and you've already got that kind of built in. So when you're making non-franchise films and you're trying to get an audience to come because of, in this case, like in War Room, you need to pray more, or you need to do this, and you're trying to pull them in for something like that. The marketing is really what convinces them, I should go, I should bring a friend, et cetera. And so the behind the scenes department is, as well as the still photography, I would group the on-set photographer into the behind the scenes, because you use that through marketing as well. But behind the scenes, you capture interviews and you capture really the heart of the film. And you're working on films that are as inspirational as they are entertaining, then you create those pieces as the behind the scenes person, or you film them and you hand them off to a marketing team. I've had the opportunity and the pleasure to work kind of in both fields. So I'll be the behind the scenes videographer or cinematographer and shoot the footage. And then I'll go and I'll work directly for Sony and help them and the marketing team create all the videos, whether that's going to theaters, going to bookstores, going to social media channels, creating all those pieces that are what going to put viewers in the seats in the theater.
So maybe a good point to jump into is like, at what point should a producer actually be looking at like bringing on people to do BTS, as opposed to just them and the director filming stuff on their phone and calling that good enough, to post on social media or whatever?
Yeah, that's a good point that you brought up, the directors or producers kind of filming, because you can, if you have directors that have a name as well, people that are following the kind of above the line as well as your actors, there's been times where we've implemented that, where either because they're busy or we want to make sure and get the files back, we've handed them our phones, or I've even had like a GoPro 360 that I would give to Alex whenever he's got a minute. And it's like, hey, walk around the set and just give me kind of like a personal piece. So it has that real connection, that personal connection, and not always this high polished, high budget kind of a feel. And with the 360 camera, then I can reframe it. And if he's looking at something over here, I can even cut to that part of the footage, and he doesn't have to worry about, okay, now I've got to film this high quality piece. He can just hold something and go say, hey, here's our set for today, or here's this actor. And, he'd go in the makeup trailer and I had this like 6-minute video footage, and then you can split that up into 4 or 5 different social media videos and drop those out there. But to your question, behind the scenes is not a position that needs to happen, like early on in development. But I would encourage producers to not overlook it or not think that, we can just have somebody pick up a camera and grab some stuff on set. Really look at behind the scenes as well. There's kind of two fields. Behind the scenes in production is the way to capture the heart of your film. It's the way to make and kind of have the window into why you guys are making the film. When I started behind the scenes work, the filmmaker in me really wanted to be like, I want to make the best making of pieces that show people how this is made, and really kind of give that peek, because it was something I wanted to watch. So I brought my needs into the production. And then when you're there, you realize that you're hired to serve the producers and the directors and the team, and sometimes ultimately the studio. And so you got to ask yourself, what are their needs? And there's been a greater need for capturing material for marketing than I expected. And it's probably, at least in the faith-based world, it's probably 70% marketing, probably 30% actual behind the scenes kind of creative pieces. Nowadays there's behind the scenes and making of for almost everything. And we're not really going to get that impressive of budgets to be able to do these crazy things that like people have never seen before. You're typically doing kind of domestic movies or smaller things. And it's not always the case, but so I had to shift my mind over to kind of that marketing side. And there's a lot of interviews asking people, the people that you interview, whether it's cast and crew, directors, producers, it's kind of putting the emotion to the making of. It's that person can connect the audience to the story. You can show people a trailer, but budget wise, your trailer is going to be the best piece that shows people, here's the story, here's why you want to come, and more kind of that entertainment value. And then the behind the scenes pieces, which, can become all the marketing pieces, are here's why you should come. Here's why you should bring a friend. Here's what you're going to take away from that project afterwards. So interviewing all those people on set is really that, it's kind of like, word of mouth. If you're like a lawn mowing business or you're kind of a small startup business, most of your business is going to come from word of mouth, from other people saying, hey, check this guy out, he did amazing work. Mm-hmm. So when you can hear someone in the production saying, here's why I'm a part of this project, here's why you should come, that's going to almost mean more to you, especially in trying to invite somebody or bring somebody with you, than just, oh, they filmed this really cool trick with green screen or Unreal Engine or something like that. So back to the original question, for producers, it's not something that has to be chosen right away, but it definitely shouldn't be a last minute thing. There's plenty of people out there who want to do this position. And even if they have no experience at all shooting behind the scenes, if you get someone who's just a good camera operator and knows how to get compelling footage, and somebody who knows how to interview well, that was one of the strengths that I found out was that helped me get hired, was the amount of interview work that I had done up to this point. And the first day of shooting, I found out that they actually were going to bring in somebody else for just the interviews, and me for kind of my filming style on capturing the kind of behind the scenes. And then but the interview person wasn't supposed to be there for the first week. So they're like, we're not going to do any interviews this first week. It's just, behind the scenes kind of observational footage. And then there was an interview that was that worked out that person was available the first week. And they're like, would you be able to shoot the interview? Do you have stuff to shoot it? And I had just gotten off of shooting dual documentaries together on the road for about 6 weeks. So I had this crazy interview setup that I had built where I could shoot and offload footage constantly and not have any interruptions, because we were shooting 5 or 6 hour interviews on the Red camera. And so So I jumped at the opportunity and shot an interview, and they were so impressed by the quality of the interview that they called the other guy and told him not to come. So I ended up shooting all the interviews and all the behind the scenes. So that gets into, do you hire a single person? Do you hire a team? And, when you are shooting interviews, you are missing opportunities of capturing behind the scenes footage. And so in that field, or in that question, I would say, how much behind the scenes content do you want to capture for your DVD, making of, and those kind of things? If your goal and your budget is more on the marketing side, then you don't really miss out on all that behind the scenes footage, because there's way more, you capture way more behind the scenes footage. If you're filming for 30 days, you've got hours and hours of stuff. You don't need kind of this constant, reel of every single moment, but it's more of, what are those pillar scenes that are going to be in the trailer? What are those pillar scenes that make up the movie, and making sure that you shoot behind the scenes of those moments, so that if you're kind of doing a piece saying, here's the heart of the film, and you show a scene from the film of that one line that's the reason you made the movie, and then you cut to the crew making the movie, praying over the movie, setting up that scene, it connects with those, those big things. You don't want to cut to a scene that has spoilers in it that, you're not going to show anybody in the trailer and is going to give away the movie. You're not really going to release that in your marketing, because you don't want anybody to see, any of those spoilers. So, that gets into kind of a technical, scheduling kind of a thing. Like, if you do have a smaller team or just one guy and he's shooting interviews as well, try to schedule those interviews on those spoiler scenes if you can, and scenes that you're not going to market, and that way you don't miss out as much. But on the productions like Overcomer, where I've had a bigger team, then I would stay in charge of the interviews, and I would move off and film those, and then there would still be one or two shooters who are capturing material, and we're covering both grounds. Mm-hmm. So that goes into just what's your budget. How many interviews do you have? Do you have to get people during production? Can you get them on the weekends? All those kinds of questions, but definitely don't let it be a last minute decision. And again, don't feel like they've got to have tons of experience doing it. They need strengths in shooting interviews. They need strengths, and that's by themselves, because some of the interviews, the publicist would be there and ask the questions, and I would just be working on the visuals. And then sometimes they couldn't make it, and they're like, hey, can you handle the questions? And you've got to be able to take those and adapt, and on the fly, through what they're saying, realize here's some more questions I can ask that would really help with the marketing side of that material.
All right. So you brought up the budget. So I'd love to kind of hear your thoughts on, like, what should a producer be considering when figuring out, like, what to budget for BTS in terms of number of people, gear, rental for them, and all that.
Yeah, excellent question there. Specific budget would, come down to like a monthly rate or a day rate for that shooter. If you can find someone who's got their gear, they're going to work faster. The way I work is I've got gear, but I also rent specific gear depending on the specific production. So I don't either bring stuff that's not needed or charge them for stuff that I'm not gonna use. And a confident shooter is going to know, if we're needing multiple cameras, getting extra lenses for multiple cameras, or on some of ours we did, there were certain setups that we couldn't really be in the room and capture. And so I would put a GoPro 360 on the camera and, worked with the camera crew to have that there. So then I could get whatever angle I wanted. If they were doing a Steadicam shot down a hallway, my GoPro could capture the entire scene on the hallway, and I don't have to be in there, because in a hallway, everything is seen. And so you still get behind the scenes footage that way, and you can get all angles and those types of things. So, if you can, as a producer, just kind of think of your average, monthly rate for that person. I would encourage bringing behind the scenes in 1 to 2 weeks before production actually starts.
Okay.
Have them there so that they can get comfortable with the crew, start those relationships, because you've got to go up and approach a bunch of people and ask for interviews. Behind the scenes is kind of a position that you're on the crew, but you're not really on the crew. And that means that like you don't have a department head. You don't have to report to any particular department. You're really kind of either reporting to the producers. So in that way, you kind of have the freedom of kind of an above the line person in a way. And sometimes you're reporting, the producers hand you off and you're reporting to the publicists or to the studio if they're really heavily involved on the marketing side. And so you have the freedom to, it's not like a crew position where when they start filming a scene, you've got to be there for that entire scene. You can't walk away and you can't leave, because if you're doing boom operating or you're acing a camera or you're a PA or something, you're required for that scene until it's done, to take a break or do anything like that. But behind the scenes, you could film the first 2 takes, get everything you need, and then you can hop over to people in the makeup trailer for the next scene and grab something else. So you've got a lot more freedom there. So starting, 1 to 2 weeks before production, you can start those relationships. You can figure out and kind of get your head around the locations, because you kind of have to be, if you're not having a team, if you're the only person doing behind the scenes, you kind of have to be your own. You kind of have to be one or two steps ahead of yourself. You've got to study that schedule and say, where are we going tomorrow? Am I going to be driving myself because of the gear that I'm taking, interview stuff? Am I going to be riding with someone else? Do I have to then kind of convert to kind of an on the fly, run and gun kind of a shooter? So having someone who's got that experience as well is helpful, being able to bring all the gear for kind of the bigger stuff, but then also being able to fit everything in a backpack and jumping in someone's back seat and still being able to get, quality stuff. So as far as doing production, if you're doing like a month shoot, then you might have a month and a half to budget of that person's day rate plus whatever their equipment rentals are. And then that price would depend on, are they shooting interviews? Are they just shooting run and gun? But you don't really you need lighting for interviews, but for the actual behind the scenes filming, you're shooting feature film quality stuff that's lit well and it's mic'd well. Sometimes I would bring additional mics and put them, if I could, on the director or on a producer who's involved in that scene, so you can kind of get their commentary as they're going and work on that. And with the Kendrick brothers, they do daily devotions every morning on set before filming starts during breakfast. And so for them, the on-set unity and the heart of the film is equally or even more important than that entertainment value. So we would film those morning devotions, and they would use bits and pieces of that to minister to their audiences on social media platforms and in bookstores and things like that. So, that's kind of, I'd say that's one challenge of shooting behind the scenes in that kind of environment, because shooting devotions, you've got people wired for mics. It's more of like a live speaker kind of setup where you've got tripods and things like that. And then as soon as they're done, everybody just goes right into work mode. You've got people getting blocking rehearsals done. You've got people going to hair and makeup. And so you've got to quickly tear down your kind of live interview setup and then get set up for run and gun or something else. So having a team in that sense can be helpful if you have those things, or if you want to capture interviews right away of kind of like a daily video blog or something of like, hey, producers, directors, what's your day going to be like? Being able to catch them in that 5 minutes before they fully jump into work, that might be your only opportunity to get like, hey, what does our day look like? So having two teams that can focus on those different aspects is helpful. So I've done both. I've had teams who've helped, and I've had to do, kind of all that myself. But I guess budgeting question, wrapping up production, moving into post-production. If if your behind the scenes shooter or team is just working through production, then basically your budget from there. And you can also think about hard drives in your budget, for them to have at least 2 copies is I would say required of all the footage. And then, you either send those hard drives off to whoever's doing your post-production kind of marketing side, or if that behind the scenes person is available, I think it's a stronger, I think you'll get better work if the person who shot the footage will edit it, because they can work faster. They remember what they shot. Someone doesn't have to now go and watch through everything and be fresh eyes on this to pull out all those gold moments. So as I'm filming, knowing I'm going to be editing this for the marketing team, I'm shooting in ways that I can cover, okay, they messed up on their interview here, or here's the different angles that I need to capture to make this little piece here and there. And so it's really helpful to bring that knowledge into the post-production side. And it really depends on what your budget is overall for, I think producers would be familiar with, based on the type of film and like the running time and different things, like that's how you kind of base your music budget on. That's how you base, different things are kind of somewhat percentages of kind of your overall budget. If you've got a much bigger budget, you'll pad your music budget with more, maybe live orchestra. So if you've got a bigger budget, you could pad the marketing, or if you have a distributor already, then you've got more in your P&A budget. So I'll say this is the last point on the budget side is a behind the scenes shooter on set for producers comes out of the production budget. But once production ends and you start editing that footage, that budget comes out of your P&A budget, your marketing budget. So I would be paid by the producers during production, but then I would be paid by a studio or distribution company during post-production. And so that budget would be whatever they have set up for P&A and for marketing.
So, and obviously this can sometimes depend just on what the production has available budget-wise. But what should a producer be considering, or in terms of like trying to know how many BTS people he might need?
When trying to figure out if you're going to do, a single person or a team for behind the scenes during production, I would say, I've always been on the video side, but right away, I would encourage producers to at least at a minimum have a cinematographer and a still photographer. Still photography is, I think, crucial to having high quality posters. I've seen so many films suffer just because they're only pulling frame grabs from the film footage and putting those on a poster, and they just don't hold up. It looks like still frames from your video footage, and it makes all the difference in the world to have that on-set person. And on some of the films I've worked on, they've done what we call gallery shoots, where they'll actually set up a backdrop and take actors in kind of their main costume or their main wardrobe and take, photos against a solid background so they can remove that background later, but not always them in action. And, some posters you'll see, like the ones that typically come to mind that use that type of photography are kind of your Marvel films, your franchise films, where you see all the characters on the poster and everyone's kind of lit well. That's where that photography will come in. And I've worked on productions where that photography is taken after production. Well, they'll bring in the actors for a day and just put them in wardrobe and just do a single photo shoot. There could be additional costs there, bringing people back in. If you've already got them on set and on a costume, if you can pull them to the side and set that up, could end up being cheaper. But the still photography, being used, everything from, your wallpapers on YouTube and iTunes and those kind of things to, the back of DVD cases, those types of things, from, there's just lots of different uses there. So at a minimum, have one video, one photographer, and then they'll work together to capture that stuff. If you get someone who's kind of that run and gun individual cinematographer who can direct their own stuff, who can shoot interviews, who can capture good audio and capture good video, they can easily do a production by themselves and capture everything. If you've got a good publicist or got a good team working with you to help capture the marketing materials, who knows, like, what are basically, it's having a distributor on board before. Maybe I should propose it that way. If you've got a distributor and a marketing plan and even a P&A budget before you're doing production, it's definitely more achievable to have a single person doing it, because you've got that team helping push in those requests of, here's the interviews that we need, here's the kind of angles. So and how that translates practically is, what you can miss out on to capture all the content that that a single person can't actually kind of do on their own. Like I said, you miss out on filming certain scenes, but having that extra team behind you kind of saying, we know these scenes we're not going to use in marketing, so we know you don't have to be there on those days. Here's the scenes that you do need on. So they're helping on scheduling side, not make scheduling conflicts where now you're missing the pillar scene of the movie and you've got an interview scheduled. It's really easy to do it with one guy. So if you think ahead and you've got, marketing teams there, then, one guy's, sufficient. But if you've only raised your production budget and you don't have any kind of marketing budget and that's coming later, there's definitely people like myself, that you could reach out to and consult and kind of help, much more inexpensively make that plan without having a marketing team or a publicist, on set with you. But if you have two shooters, then you can have somebody step away and do interviews and somebody continue to film. And again, you're going to have more footage than you need, but at least if you say, oh yeah, that one scene, we now need to show a peek behind the curtain, you've got it, because you've got all that footage there. So two to three, I'd say is kind of a target to go for if you've got the budget for it.
Okay. So, and you talked a lot about this as well in that answer, so we'll kind of swing into that. But what all information do, either whether it's from the producer or it's from the studio, if you already have that distributor on board, needs to get passed on to the BTS team?
That's a good question. After shooting a film and you start editing, you always kind of make a list of, man, I wish I would have captured that. I wish I would have done this differently. And how can I do better on the next job to, capture that content? I think freshly going into it, I, made the mistake of bringing too much of my desires into it, of what I want to see as a moviegoer, on a DVD. And I've noticed and learned in the faith-based world, not all of your audience really cares as much about the making of as they do, kind of those heart connections and kind of that inspirational side. And, because you've got pastors who use the tools that you create, the first piece, at least in the faith-based world and behind the scenes, the first big piece that you put together is what we call like the heart of the film. And I don't know if any producers out there have seen those, for whether it's the Kinder Brothers or the Irwins or, skit guys, anybody like that. They've got kind of the heart of, which is like half trailer, half movie footage, half interviews, but it's really like, here's why we made this movie. Here's why we care about this. Here's why the nation needs this movie. Like for War Room, here's why we need a movie on prayer right now. Here's what our culture is going through. Overcomer, talking about identity. Beyond the Mask was talking about identity as well. All these had kind of a heart of piece. So that's kind of your big job. And that's something that you also try to deliver, at least in my experience. You try to deliver by the end of production, Sometimes it's halfway through. On the Kendrick films, they have set visits where they'll bring in influencers, pastors, um, different marketing people to kind of get a glimpse and kind of stir the excitement for the film. And when they bring everybody in, they want to show them not just walking around on locations and looking at the crew, but here's what we've been doing. And so, you work with the on-set editor to get film footage that they've already shot. And you're kind of making the first trailer, the first look into the film as well, and combining that with your interviews so that people are like, oh, I totally get it. This is why I need to be behind this and help market this film. Because the best thing that you can do as a producer is get other people behind your film that want to go tell their audiences about your film. It's making those partnerships. So if you are on a low budget and you can still have that opportunity to bring in those influencers, pastors, whoever, that it helps them because it's now a tool that they can use for their audiences. But they're going to now advertise and market for you. That's kind of free marketing, free advertising for you. Your behind the scenes person helps put that first taste together. So I'll work directly with the producers on creating that piece because they know what the message of their film is. They know why they're telling the story, why they're putting their heart and soul into this, and how that can get communicated over to those people that are coming on set. So that's kind of the first thing is, okay, what do I need to capture in order to create this heart of piece? And you're looking at that. Why are we making this movie? And so, 1/3 of that is you want to show cool, flashy footage of here's the actors on location. Here's I think maybe I should say in marketing, there's two kinds of marketing. There's basic explaining what it is. And then there's that second level of marketing that's you may not think that you need this, but here's why you need this. That goes into all the, no interest offers and, you didn't think you needed this tool for your kitchen, but here's why you really do. They tell you all the problems and then you get emotionally connected and you're like, oh yeah, I never knew I needed this weird kind of gadget, but now that you explain it, like I know I need it. So there's that convincing kind of salesperson kind of marketing, mm-hmm. But then there's just the basic marketing of, hey, Spider-Man's got a new movie coming out. You don't have to convince them why. It's just that awareness, bringing awareness to it. So splitting your mindset into those two things of capturing assets that just bring awareness. And then you have that sales side of here's why you should be praying more. Here's why you should be focusing on where your true identity is. Here's why, whatever the reason that you're making the film, that theme or that message of the film. So as a producer, communicating, to the behind the scenes team, here's the theme, here's the why, having that conversation. They need the script so that they can go through and start to figure out, what aspects of the story are there to then join your team in saying why, because if the behind the scenes person is invested in why this is being made, then they're going to capture better content. Just like you're going to get a pastor, an influencer, or somebody on board, you get your behind the scenes team to say, I want to sell this movie for you. I want people to come see this movie. Then they're going to be excited about the footage that they capture. So it's easy to jump into that salesy side of we've got to convince everybody to come see this, and skip over that awareness side of just, hey, this person is in our movie and you're going to want to see it because of that. Or, these directors are making another film, and just kind of showing that awareness side. So I split my thinking into kind of that awareness capture and then that kind of sales investment into the project capture. And then, we make a list of who's available to be interviewed. And, that's capturing that B-roll footage of those people to add over their interviews as well. And then if it's a decent production that's got call sheets, I hope every production would have call sheets on their shoots. And that's really kind of the bread and butter of figuring out your day-to-day stuff of where you need to be Because again, like I said, you don't have a department head, you don't have that restriction of having to be certain places. So if you've got a film that's got 2 units, you can decide which unit is more important this day. You can look at that call sheet and decide, do I need to be getting blocking and rehearsals or last minute art department stuff on this stuff, or can I go spend time in the hair and wardrobe? Is there somebody who's only going to be here on this day that I can capture and follow them around? So having the script, having the call sheet, and then if you've got a marketing and distribution team, ahead, then they'll probably, they've sent me like a list of questions or a list of typical videos that they, and it's usually overshooting. It's like, we want you to try to capture, all this kind of stuff. And the next thing to consider is, when is your film coming out and what holidays are going to be after production through when your film releases.
Okay.
So if you've got if you've got a Christmas release and you filmed in January, February, you filmed in the spring, then you're probably going to have Mother's Day, Father's Day, Independence Day, Labor Day, and if you've got a spring or summer release, then okay, you've got Easter in there. So look at what your holidays are, and what we would end up doing is, okay, each actor, each person that would come through, shout out to your audiences for social media for a Mother's Day message, shout out to your audiences for an Easter message or a Christmas message, and that could be them turning the corner to walk on location and they're like, hey guys, I'm here shooting a movie. I hope you guys have a great Father's Day. And that's it. So you got your personal connection with that person, that star. And then in editing, you can then jump into a 10-second trailer of the movie. And then, so it's a way, it gives people ammunition on their channels and on social media to hit their audiences with, hey, we can say Merry Christmas to everybody and advertise your movie at the same time, so on and so forth. So, that there's a whole page on holidays and events and things to capture material, for that. And then taking that one step further, you've got your list of, hey, our film is in theaters today, thinking ahead, getting people on set to say that whole list of things so that you can, then say, hey, it's the Friday before our movie hits theaters, or it's the Friday before we hit Netflix. And now the main star of our movie or the director of the movie is saying, hey, we're about to hit Netflix next week, go check it out or go buy the movie on iTunes. So thinking ahead and creating all those little pieces, as many as you can with as many different people. And then you can kind of pick or choose in post-production, how you want to market and how you want to get the word out at what time of year.
Okay. So I'd be curious to hear just from like your experience, has the way you've shot BTS or edited BTS kind of changed over the years as like, things have gone more to streaming platforms and things like that? Or has like BTS kind of stayed the same in terms of what you need and how you're doing it?
Yeah, I definitely, the more I've done it, have learned to relax, and that if I miss a moment, life is not going to be over. I'm not going to be fired. We're not going to fail at our mission to advertise this movie. I have learned to, that it's more important to advertise your movie than to tell people how it's made. People are not typically going to come to, I would say low budget movies in my mind are 10 million and under budgets, whether you're making a $200,000 movie or an $8 million movie. You're typically not going to get people that are coming to see how it's made. And so you've got to almost work harder because you don't have that franchise kind of built in to tell people why to come and see the movie. So I've had to shift my thinking from how is the movie being made to why is the movie being made. And in that, you kind of get more relaxed that the real bread and butter is going to be the interviews and the connections with the people. So really having somebody who's not afraid of going up and asking people in moments that you think they're going to say no. Because you might, if they sit down in front of you and you have a conversation, it might be easy to ask them, whatever you want. But if they're walking from the bathroom back to set and they only have 10 seconds, you can't be like, well, they probably don't have time, because at that moment you've already lost them and they're already busy. But being able to think ahead and say, okay, I just saw the main star go over here. I'm going to finish filming and I'm going to go follow them. And even if it's walking fast paced with them and just saying, hey, I need 5 second bit of you saying what you're doing today. And then you capture it and you get on, and then knowing when to not be too much in their face. I'll tell a funny story. On my first day of working with the Kenner brothers, I was so eager to get the director's perspective on making of the film that I was just following Alex Kendrick around a little too closely. And I was looking for those audio bites from him of, being able to look in my camera and be like, that was a great take, or, hey, we're about to go and shoot this, and just have like, you want to hear from the director as he's making the film. And so it was my first day ever doing behind the scenes. And I was, hanging around him, waiting for that little audio bite. And, he'd kind of look over at me and notice that I was there because I was like in his field of view. And at the end of the first day, Steven Kendrick, who's the producer, pulled me aside and he's like, I don't really know how to tell you this, but Alex says that you were kind of annoying and you need to back off a little bit. So I was thinking like, oh no, like I'm going to get fired. They're never going to call me back. Like I was ticked off the director. And so the next day, like I stayed as far away as I could from Alex and didn't want to be in his way, didn't want to interrupt him at all, and captured other stuff. And, I've now been working with them for seven or 8 years. So, obviously wasn't that big of a deal, but we both, learned in that moment. I learned to be more in the background as a behind the scenes shooter, and find those opportunities where you can approach people. And then I think Alex, not having that kind of behind the scenes person there, learned that while my main job is to make the movie, I'm still helpful to the audience in hearing about the movie and getting people to come. And so we got into a really good groove where I could tell when he wanted to say something and when to kind of approach him. And then he knew like, this is what you're looking for. So they would, start spitting little sound bites into the camera. So we both kind of worked together to kind of have that relationship. So, definitely learn to not, you don't have to be anywhere and everywhere and not be in the way, when to be out of the way. And, sometimes as behind the scenes, you can get the footage that you need during rehearsals and not during the actual filming, because you might either be not using the sound at all, or it still looks like the making of, so you can get in and get out of there and not be in the way of the team.
Let's maybe take a little bit to transition to like what the post-production side of things is like, and what that timeline and work process is like for you.
Okay. So I've been very blessed to work on the behind the scenes through the marketing campaign, and that might last for 6 months, 8 months, or even up to like 14 months if you go into home entertainment release. So, you first have your kind of, that hard of piece that I told you about earlier that you work on, is kind of your one main deliverable. If you've got a super low budget, I would say, that's going to be the biggest marketing piece that you use. The more budget you have, the more different pieces that you can release on social media and throughout your campaign. But the number one piece that you're going to put marketing money behind is going to be your trailer. If you've got a teaser trailer and a trailer, then you've got those two. But the main trailer is going to be, what you're going to run YouTube ads with, what you're going to put, potentially in theaters, on different websites. So that's going to be where most of your money comes from. And in my experience, the next piece is that hard of piece. You may not run that on social as much. That's more of kind of a handout piece that you'll pass out to pastors and churches, or you'll pass out to bookstores, or pass out to kind of where your audience is. And so if you've only got kind of a minimum bare bones, shoot for that. Shoot for getting those interviews of why are we making this film, why you should go see this film, and combining that with film footage. So we'd have one version of that's kind of the quick on-set version. And then as soon as production's over, it's okay, now take what you shot in the last half of production. And now that we've got all the footage from the film, let's beef up that video. And so that's kind of task number one. And, that can take, sometimes up to a month to really get that nailed in and get that perfect. And so as a producer, anything from there is just, icing on the cake kind of in your marketing, and it's creating social media videos for different platforms. And then on the marketing side, I'll also work with film footage. The directors and producers really touch the edit, and they may Alex likes to do the bloopers. And then they do their commentary on the DVD. But in my experience, anything else video wise that goes out to the world runs through your video marketing editor. So my title would be, behind the scenes cinematographer. And then once production's over, then I would assume the role of video marketing editor. And it all depends on what your marketing budget is, to how long you need that person and how many pieces they're going to create. Is it just, hey, we're going to create 5 different pieces on different aspects, and then we just kind of circulate those. If you've got 5 videos to put out there, it's less content for people to see, but people can see those videos more. Mm-hmm. If you've got 100 videos, each video might have less views, but you've got all of those out in different places. So, don't think about it as that more content is always better. It's just people are going to ingest the content. How quickly do you want that content to change and be new? And then how much do you want them to kind of repeat that content? One thing I learned many years ago is that kind of in marketing, it usually takes a person an average of 7 times to see something before they buy. Okay. Whether that's seeing or hearing about it. So, whether that's the same video that they see with 7 different impressions, or that's 7 different videos, either way, you're now in their mind, about 7 times. And then it's okay, I'll buy a ticket, or I'll go. It's in their memory enough to oh yeah, when's that movie coming out? When am I going to get to see that? Kind of a person. So, quantity is not always better, but again, it depends on your budget. If you've got a low budget, put your money into your trailer, put your money into the hard of piece, and then anything else that you can produce from there to hit holidays, to hit kind of those announcement things, to reach your audience.
For sure. So we'll go ahead and start wrapping it up. I do have kind of 2 closing questions. So the first one is, have you seen any common either mistakes or misconceptions that maybe producers have made when either working with their behind the scenes team or planning for behind the scenes content?
Well, I think the hardest part for producers during production is, you've got the art side and you've got the business side. The longer I've been in the industry, the more I realize that the business side drives a lot of the decisions, whether you want them to or not, because you can make the coolest movie in the world, but if no one goes and sees it, kind of what's the point? So it's hard to pull your focus away from making the film, because your job on set is to make the best film possible, and you don't want to sacrifice or compromise that quality or that vision. Um, and so you do work more with the producers than directors, because a director, that's really his territory and his field where he's the busiest. But if you've got more than one producer, someone who can help, I think that's been a benefit, is having like an associate producer or co-producer that kind of takes the behind the scenes under the wing and looks at, okay, what are your needs? What are your setup times? What are your limitations? In helping build that interview schedule. I've had productions where I've had to kind of be more in charge of building the interview schedule, and it's easier to drop the ball because you're trying to film and be a director of your own movie, of this movie, at the same time as I'm now being a producer and I'm scheduling interviews. And so as a producer, first off, seeing that you're hiring somebody who is going to have to wear multiple hats. They're going to be a cinematographer, a director, a shooter, capturing their own audio and offloading footage during the day or at night. And where can I alleviate those stress points based on the type of production schedule I have? Is that just getting someone to help offload footage for them so that they don't have to worry about dropping or losing footage, and they can go out the rest? Is it having a producer come alongside of them and just schedule those interviews and make sure that they don't schedule them where that behind the scenes shooter is feeling the most creative and capturing kind of that awareness content or that making of content? Because at the same time, you're still producing pieces for the DVD of, the making of. And so, which is more the nitty gritty awareness and kind of that cool factor. So it can be a lot of work as a behind the scenes to capture non-marketing piece. I've got to capture interviews for the DVD that are non-marketing. I've got to capture long takes so people can see how the movie's made, and make sure it's not all in one location, but we've got varying locations, and like, okay, we're going to do this cool outside shot. That's the only time we're here. I want to go capture that. So you're basically you're shooting a run and gun documentary of a feature film, and you're creating marketing pieces, and you're editing a video at night to help people. So as a producer, be aware of those issues. Be aware that you're, if you do have a budget, building a team, to especially if you want more content on a DVD or behind the scenes content, if that's your goal as well, you're basically asking them to capture their own documentary. And so, can I give them a producer to alleviate the production side of that that film that they're making? Do I give them another shooter so that they can do more of the so really have a good conversation with your behind the scenes person, and what are their strengths. If they don't like producing, then bring a producer to come alongside of them. If they don't like the DIT offloading side, if they're more just behind the camera or a people person, then bring someone in, for that. So figure out what their skills are. So I think the first time in, it was kind of new for everybody in that sense. And, it would have been nice to have somebody just kind of reach out, and it's like, okay, what are your skills and strengths that you feel confident in? Because if the behind the scenes people can be confident in what they're doing, they're going to produce better work, rather than you saying, I think you need a producer, I think you need this. They might be saying, well, that's really where I feel strong about, or I feel better about. So, have that conversation with them. So that's probably a good, I would say, a month to a month and a half before production starts, that you want to have those conversations so they can have time to prep and prepare, read the script, build those questions that they want to ask in interviews, et cetera, and then be there 1 or 2 weeks before production starts.
So then my final question, and this could be related to the BTS department, but it doesn't have to be. But the last question is, what's one piece of advice you'd give to producers about running a good set?
About running a good set. the best advice I would give on running a good set would be focus on your team unity. And the Kendricks do such a good job at this, is that they build out a team that they know is going to have that unity and be that family and work well together. Because you're going to have stressful times where you're running up against the clock, potentially going into overtime. You're going to have ideas that may or may not work, whether that's a makeup idea, or something's not going to meet your expectations, and it's going to put pressure on your crew. And if that crew trusts in each other and believes in each other and is there for each other as a family, then you're going to be able to work through those problems so much easier. Stephen Kendrick is an encourager, and that's, I think, one of the best strengths I've seen of him as a producer, is encouraging his crew, understanding when they get tired. You're working so long for so hard, you're away from your family during production, that it's very taxing. And so knowing that these people are here not just to give you something and that you get something out of them, but they're furthering their careers, they're sacrificing a lot to be here. And so really encouraging and blessing your crew. One time on War Room, they had an ice cream truck show up outside, and they stopped production. They built in their schedule that day. It was a shorter page count that day. And so we had like a 30-minute break where we all got free ice cream from the ice cream truck. And it felt like you were a kid again. It's like when the ice cream truck came around the corner, and it was like they didn't need to spend money to give, kind of unlimited ice cream to, 50 people, but they chose to bless us, and it, pushed us through the rest of that week and got us through. And so I would say that's the best thing to do for a crew is, from the top, can you find a couple $1,000s in your budget to bless them? We get hospitality bags when we come into our hotel rooms or when we come on location, and then like an ice cream truck showing up or things like that. It might be a small little chunk out of your budget and not much, but little blessings along the way to encourage and bless your crew really helps that morale and helps keep that up, to know that they care about you as a person and not just what can you give me to make my movie better.
Nice. No, that's some good advice. Well, thank you very much, Kevin, for coming on the show today to talk about this topic.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. It was great to spend time with you, and to all those listening, I hope this has been helpful in your production journey.
And on that note, we are going to wrap up this episode of the Producer Podcast. Until next time, make sure to subscribe to the Producer Podcast, and thanks for listening.